Welcome on in, fellow enjoyers of the Astra Militarum. This is Sprues and Studs, and we are going to be taking a look at the McFarlane Commissar to see if this action figure is going to be well worth your money spent. My first impression of this action figure is as follows. For one, the top coat that the Commissar is wearing is, for a lack of a better term, a little bit too shiny for my taste. And seriously, there is really nothing much to see here because this top coat obscures nearly everything on this action figure. Second, I'm not sure if this is the way the collar sits or looks on the neck, because I feel as if this action figure's head is craning too far forward, that the Commissar looks hunched like Quasimodo. If you look at what other Commissars are wearing, I'll say this one does not have the same riz as the ones depicted. So this leader figure is obviously wearing a peaked officer's cap, which is accurate to what they should be wearing. There is a nice variety of colors with the black, maroon, and the gold wing skull. The 10 o'clock shadow that this figure sports is indicative that he has no time except to bark orders. It would also appear that the shadow has spread and become his hair, which is, well, a rather odd look. Otherwise, the eyes are screened on nicely, and there appears to be a decent amount of features for this facial sculpt here. Now, looking at the shoulder and arms area, it would appear that this figure likes to wear his carapace armor over the greatcoat, which is a kind of odd look to me. The plates is clearly a monochrome silver color with a couple studs on it. From what I can tell, these plastic plates are attached to the top coat by the way of how a pin would attach to clothing right here. Then, as I said before in my initial impressions, that the rest of this arm is obscured by this very shiny vinyl that, I'm sorry, really gives off a cheap vibe. Aside from that, the sleeves end with a collar that is an entirely different material than this shiny vinyl. They attach the same way that the plates attach and are made of a kind of texturized plastic material. I'll be honest with you, since I'm not as well versed in Imperial Guard lore, I don't know exactly what this bland looking device on his right arm does. So please let me know in the comment section. Front and center of the Commissar's chest is a gigantic breastplate. The plate armor actually has some sort of depth on it due to this Nuln Oil type shading on the sides of it. There's actually a good amount of color variation with the usage of the gold wing skull, and I'm really shocked that McFarlane decided to shade the eye sockets and nasal cavity. Most of the time they decide to leave these sections a flavorless monochrome color. I am glad that McFarlane also has not deviated from their style in that you can see battle damage in the form of scrapes and dings. And as we attempt to look at the torso, well, it's covered, so there's nothing to see here. However, what we can see is the waist area. The only other thing that you're able to see in this section without moving the top coat is obviously the belt. There's a leather-like texturing that is happening on the belt, but I could really use some sort of color definition, such as either highlighting or shading, for that matter, or both. At least the buckle is a different color, which is silver, that contrasts with the brown, and the metal studs add a little bit more character. Aside from that, there is a large pouch here, a holster which does not seem to fit the bolt pistol, and a black frag grenade in the back. Now let's take a look at the legs. Oh wait, you can't see them because they're obscured by this very large piece of shiny plastic. You can at least remove this top coat out of the way to see the legs, but while we're on the topic of the coat, when you peel it back, the inner lining gives off this like soft fuzzy kind of feeling. Now that you've revealed what is under the Commissar's dress, you will encounter something that we have seen before in many Imperial Guard figures before, which is a highly texturized plastic area meant to mimic the folds of clothes, although it is hard to see any kind of definition because this area is as black as the void of deep space. Here is a side-by-side comparison with a veteran guardsman that was released back in 2022, and you'll notice that this area down here is pretty much 100% the same. The only thing that is different are the boots that this figure is wearing, which the texturization looks a little bit like leather. So taking a look at this chainsword, McFarlane has been slowly stepping up their game with the colorization of their weapons. I am shocked that there's actually 3 different colors on this weapon. The silver of both the vent and the teeth area, as well as the gold winged skull, does a sufficient amount to break up the black of the sword. Now, comparing the chainsword of the veteran guardsman, you can see the stark improvement in the painting and detail of this one versus the old one. This is an improvement for sure, but still, I don't know if it's enough. The bolt pistol is another solid piece of an upgrade when it comes to the painting. Back in the day, this would look either like a solid black or a silver mass of plastic, and that would be it. Thankfully, there is definition with the black casing as well as the silver magazine. However, I think the silver area could benefit with a coat of some shading in the form of Nuln Oil or something. Aside from that, you get a data card which details who a Commissar is within the ranks of the Imperial Guard Army or Astra Militarum, as you can see right here. In terms of movement of this action figure, there really isn't any inhibition of movement in the head area. You can achieve 360 degrees of motion without any issues whatsoever. However, due to this top coat, there is inhibition of movement. If you do a 180 degree spin, it's fine. You can push this a little bit more, but the problem is you're going to start stretching this vinyl over here, and you're likely going to rip it if you push it too much. And the same thing with the waist area. There is only so much movement that you can do, probably around 90 degrees right here, before you encountered some sort of resistance. Again, due to this massive top coat. Thankfully, in the leg area, because it really isn't being hindered by this top coat, there is no issues with movement right here. Now, let's do a quick size comparison between the Commissar and this Imperial Guard veteran. It would appear that this Commissar stands just a little bit taller than this veteran right here. Then a good amount of you have been lamenting the size creep of recent Joy Toy releases, and I'm not sure if McFarlane is doing any better, because this Commissar is quite massive when compared against the Space Wolf. I would think that if things were to scale, perhaps the Commissar would literally only be in the torso area here. So, I don't know. Both of these manufacturing companies, scale-wise, leaves a little bit room to be desired. And now, let's draw some definitive conclusions for this action figure. Alright, members of the chapter, I'm just gonna cut right to the chase and say that I'm quite disappointed with this action figure, and I really don't think, even though it costs $30 MSRP, that's really worth your money, unless if you are a obviously Astra Militarum enjoyer and want this guy to fill out your action figure ranks. And the reason why I say that is just because this figure just looks cheaply done. I know that's pretty harsh to say, but the top coat really detracts from the rest of this action figure. Now, as I shown you some examples of some really fantastic regalia on some Commissars, this Commissar looks just too dull and too bland. And then another thing is that when I was posing this action figure for the B-reel, trying to fit the weapons into this action figure's hands, the hands are literally as stiff as a corpse, and that you cannot put the weapons into the hands without some sort of heavy manipulation, such as dunking into hot water or using a pair of tweezers to kind of pry the fingers open to receive the weapons. So really, there's not much to say except that I think you could probably skip out on this one. So members of the chapter, thank you for tuning in to this action figure review. Again, I appreciate all of your likes, comments, and subscribes. It has been fantastic to engage all of you in a nice dialogue about these action figures and this hobby that we're in. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you all in the next one.